Welcome everyone, Questine here with Mother Ostankya in Total War Warhammer 3, patch 4.0, Shadows of Change. And in this video, I want to talk about what you should do if you're looking to dominate the campaign map as her. There are certainly drawbacks with playing Mother Ostankya, but she also has a significant amount of power. Faction effects benefits: she gets wins a magic power reserve capacity +1 for each resource producing buildings. She gets a global recruitment duration -1 for the incarnate elemental of beast units, plus a melee attack when fighting against armies that spread corruption, which includes Morathi. In fact, this entire campaign could be described as how to ruin Morathi's life. Then you get +10 melee defense for spider hatchlings and giant spider units. And then you have to look at Mother Ostankya and her Lord effects. There's a bunch of benefits to magic. I'd say the most important thing that comes out of here is the fact that her entire army has magical attacks. And she also gets Hag Recruitment, Hag Witch Recruitment in all provinces, and +2 hero capacity. Though hero capacity for Hag Witch is not really a problem, because it's very easy to get that capacity through any tier 3 settlement through the Silent Grove. Okay, so with that in mind, you do start with an army of 2 ambushers, 1 incarnate elemental of beasts, 1 thing in the woods, 1 cave bat unit, and 2 giant spider units. You do start with Mother Ostankya and a giant, a Hag Witch over here. Now, both the Hag Witches and Ostankya are artillery pieces, in the sense that they can do a lot of damage as an artillery piece while moving in a battle. And they're also pretty fast, both of them. So they can decimate entire armies just through their ranged attacks, just have them running around with their sleds. Yes, Creative Assembly, I think the community is probably going to be pretty salty over the fact that you gave Ostankya a sled and you haven't given Catherine a sled, but that's a different discussion for another time. But here's the critical difference between Ostankya and the Hag Witches. Ostankya can attack walls in sieges. The Hag Witches cannot. But otherwise, they both have a significant amount of ranged firepower in battles as a mobile artillery piece. So she's doing 555 armor-piercing damage, whereas if I attach that Hag Witch, they do 325. So both of them can do a significant amount of damage, armor-piercing damage. Then you have the ambushers. The ambushers, the magical effects are because of Ostankya, but the vast majority of the ambusher damage is done through armor piercing. So most of the damage is armor piercing damage, which means that they will decimate entire armies that stand in their path, like including the Dark Elves, which can have some heavily armored units, Warriors of Chaos, anything of that particular nature. I think the ambushers are going to become the go-to Kislev unit. They are a tier 2 unit, though keep in mind they do have a downside cost. They are fairly expensive to recruit and maintain at 213 upkeep compared to regular Kossars, which are half the cost. So while they are very, very powerful, it will limit how many armies you have. I think a combination of ambushers and regular Kossars is probably the way to go, or a bunch of armored Kossars and ambushers in a general Kislev campaign. Now, Ostankya does not have the ability of recruiting any of the regular Kislev units until she gets to Kislev, either taking control of one of the special Kislevite cities or making an alliance, a defensive alliance with someone that does control that. This includes patriarchs. So this does mean that her casualty replenishment for early on in her campaign is going to be very low. And you are going to want to make your way to Kislev. But until you make your way to Kislev, you do have the campaign situation to deal with over here. And the way to describe this campaign is playing basically Morathi's campaign, but kind of a bit in reverse. Because Morathi, what she does, she starts in Titan Peaks, then she makes her way west, and conquers all the way to North. You're conquering in the east and then heading west. So you're doing the reverse of what Morathi does in her campaign. If I'm playing a campaign as Morathi, what I will do is my main army will take over all of this territory, sell it to Mazdamundi, and eventually make an alliance with him. And Morathi's army will end up here. Where if I'm playing Ostankya, I'm just gonna flat out take this territory. You do start a war with the bully called Dark Elves. Now, when we're talking about her campaign, you do have a choice to make. You do start with a tier 2 minor settlement, and this presents multiple opportunities. What I've done so far, playing this campaign, starting this campaign multiple times over, is the following. I've gone to Marathi, declared war on the Tor faction. You can decide not to do this. There are reasons why you wouldn't want to do it, and I'll explain those in just a moment. But declare war on the Tor faction, start building an eerie wood so I can get those ambushers as quickly as possible, and start getting the caverns of silk. You don't want to recruit spider hatchlings, but you do want to recruit giant spiders. They're heavily armored, they've got poison attacks, most of their damage is armor piercing. Spider hatchlings are not worth it, giant spiders absolutely are. So what I'm saying is Ostankya within the first couple of turns can start recruiting an army that is designed to perfectly counter everything that she will encounter in this situation. Now, I would recommend fighting some of these battles manually. At least the very first battle. Like the first battle, the one on the field, you should fight manually, if not both. Ideally, it would be to fight both to minimize casualties, and I think you do actually gain more experience. Once you level up, the first two things you should get are Root Marcher, Inspiring Presence, then get Firing Drills, 3 points, and then save up points to get her special skill line for all the benefits she has there. For the Hag Witches, the Protective Charms are useless, so you're going to want to get, for the when you start with, you want to get the Amber Spear skill as quickly as possible, though also you want to get Flock of Doom, because that can be really, really useful. Now, you will always get a Woodsman Hut over here from this element. And what I would also recommend for people once they've taken this element is they should load a Frost Witch available from a previous campaign. The way to unlock a Frost Witch very quickly is play Catherine's campaign or Boris Ursa's campaign or Castaltin. Doesn't matter who you're playing. I think Castaltin would actually be better, but just play that even in Realms of Chaos. Save and level up characters until you get some that have good stats. The one really good stat is the War Sled upgrade, which you can't recruit until much later on. And this way you will have 2 heroes, 2 magic users. You won't really be using the Frost Maiden in this situation, but Tempest is really the way to go. Also, you would probably want to have saved Ice Witch Lord, in particular the one with the infantry focus benefit, and also the missile strength. So infantry focused would give you the upkeep benefit for virtually all the units, Cossars, Ambushers, and Giant Spiders that you'd be using. Also reduce the recruitment cost, and then you can also get missile strength. This does take a while. You don't necessarily need to do this, but it is going to give you that early game advantage that you can really use the steamroll. And this is what I focus on in campaign. How do you end up steamrolling? And yeah, fighting at least one of these battles over here, be it the army or the settlement, is indicated here. There is another army here. It does have quite a few units, including Black Ark Corsairs. Now, this army might, dependent on the strength of your army here, might attack you. That would actually be ideal, because Ostankya herself could probably annihilate this army in open battle. There's also 2 minor Beastmen factions over here that one of them might be wiped out, both of them might be wiped out by the AI, or you can end up fighting both of them yourself. But there's also Skaven that control the Ashen Coast. Your goal is to ultimately take over control of this entire territory. Now, whenever you get the diplomatic opportunity to gain money from the AI, take it. So when you meet Terranok and you need to take Arnheim or the Moonshard to get vision on Terranok, make a trade agreement with them. When you meet Alariel and Tyrion, make a trade agreement with them. You could technically make an alliance with Marathi. There are plenty of choices of that, but their territory is prime real estate for you. So your goal is to make the circle here, come up with our army north, defeating everything along the way. You have the army to defeat everything that's thrown against you. For the first 2 turns, I just recruit Corsairs, then recruit like 5 ambushers, then recruit a bunch of giant spiders, and that would be Ostankya's army. Once that's complete, I would get the second army and just do the same combination. The reason you get regular Corsairs is the cost, and they're still pretty effective. Ambushers are really strong, giant spiders are a really powerful melee unit. The biggest issues early on in this campaign are going to be as follows. You do have a siege, and it's likely going to be against the entire garrison of 10 units. The garrisons have been indeed buffed by the looks of things, though it's not necessarily as significant a buff as it might be made out to be, but the garrisons are certainly strong. And the second biggest issue is going to be Marathi's army. Now, this is all on legendary difficulty. How the AI behaves on lower difficulty will be different, because the AI behavior is just lower on, it's just different on lower difficulties. So things might end up unfolding differently. But what will happen is this army will likely retreat to Arnheim, and maybe even wipe out this army first, because if we look at oh yeah, they start war with Skeggy, so they're probably not gonna wipe these guys out. Marafi, she's always gonna take the Petrified Forest, Tor, and Iron Spike, and I've seen her do that in that specific order. She generally leaves Grey Rock Point last. This is gonna come in handy much later on to know. But that means by the time you've taken the Moon Shard and moved an army here to Grey Rock Point, you can actually ambush Marafi. And the clever way of dealing with this is you come over here. One particular clever way of doing it is to not declare war on the Tor faction early on, as I've done here. It is an option for early game money, but you can also decide to avoid it. Avoid declaring war on them. When you're about to move on Grey Rock Point, go to these guys. They'll be very, very weak at that point, and it'll give you a ton of money for declaring war on Marafi. You then wipe them out, deal with Marafi. Your army should be able to annihilate Marafi's army in battle. Then you move to the Petrified Forest. Then you move directly to the ancient city of Quintext. And then Tor, Iron Spike, Sulphurets, all that. Once you have a full stack, maybe a turn or two after that, you should start recruiting a second army over here. Combination of ambushers, giant spiders, and Cossars. You could, of course, make it the full-on ambushers. You can make it full-on Cossars. Hell, you could make it even full-on spiders. All of those would work. Now, ambushers also have more armor than Cossars. They're better melee. They're just an upgraded version of the regular Cossars. They're just flat out better in every single way. One particular thing you can also do here once you've taken these settlements, because these are port settlements. Well, Noctilus's campaign behavior is such that in virtually every campaign I've played, what he tends to do, he will wipe out the army here, and then he'll march north to take this settlement over here, basically take Terranok in its entirety, and effectively you can annihilate them. Your army, even if you literally just recruit a bunch of regular Cossars, will annihilate Noctilus. And I'm not saying like you'll defeat them. I'm saying you're gonna wipe the floor with Noctilus, because his units have low leadership, low armor. Guess what? Your Kislev units have incredibly high leadership, if only because of by our blood, and they have a good amount of range potential. You will outrange him, you will outdamage him. He has absolutely nothing to stand against you. You hard counter basically everyone around you except the High Elves. The High Elves can and will defeat you if you end up in a war with them and their climate is not suitable. So you take Arnheim, you potentially take Noctilus, basically you go to Terranok, you ask him for a ton of money to declare war on Noctilus, you declare war on Noctilus, wipe his army out, and then get the peace agreement. Don't go for the Galleon's Graveyard, I don't think that's worth it. And then make your way over here, try and avoid a war with Hexoatl. If the opportunity presents itself to take the Ziggurat of Dawn before Hexoatl, take it, because then you can sell it to Mazdamundi. I haven't done so far because I always felt like doing other things was worth it, but that is an opportunity. Once you get vision with Hexoatl, you do probably want to declare war on their factions in exchange for money or just a diplomatic benefit. And once Ostankya is around here, you'll get various quest battles over here. So she's got an item, she's got various quest battles for the jinxes that you'll unlock. But once you've secured this entire central area, you don't want to go in Lustria. You want to make an alliance with Mazdamundi and have good relations with the High Elves. They naturally will be friendly towards you. Just don't ally the Dark Elves. But march over here in the Witchwood, take it over, occupy and loot it because it's a significant amount of money. You could even sack it and then occupy it. But you do benefit from having these forests. Kislev can benefit from having single region provinces if they have a lot of building slots, because Kislev has a significant amount of structures that have stacking benefits on them. So bear that in mind. The Sisters of Twilight, you hard counter them. In fact, you might just be able to auto-resolve every single battle against them with a combination of ambushers, giant spiders, and regular Cossars, even with your secondary or tertiary army if you do have it. The biggest problem is that recruiting those armies as quickly as possible is going to leave you bankrupt. The way you gain money is declaring various declarations of war, various diplomatic choices. Like, for instance, you might go to the Sisters of Twilight or the Dracula Coven and go to the Dracula Coven and get the declaration of war against the Heralds of Ariel. I would not recommend doing this unless you're in such a position that you can wipe out the Sisters yourself. Various opportunities. The Skaven here are actually your biggest threat. Yes, bigger than Marafi, because Marafi is just going to have a bunch of Dark Shards, Dread Spears, Bleak Swords, and the garrisons. you will wipe those out. The Skaven will have Warp Fire Forwarders, Warp Grinders, assuming you have the Skaven DLC, and maybe even Plague Claws. And they do start with 5 settlements, so bear in mind they are going to have multiple armies they're going to throw on you, so be a bit careful, and they can ambush you. Though you can certainly settlement hop over here, like the only vulnerable point is like when you've taken Iron Spike and then moved to Sulphurets, and then from Sulphurets you're trying to move to Titan's Peak, but otherwise you can settlement hop over here, no problem. And your second army might even take the Ixrak Gorge and take the entirety of the Iron Sand Desert. Katep will generally like you, because if you play this right, you'll be powerful, and the way the Tomb King's AI works, diplomacy-wise, is that Tomb Kings do like, naturally, or have a high approval rating, or high aversion, towards factions that just generally have a high level of power. Katep can be a pretty useful ally, though keep in mind that might push you towards war with Malekith, potentially the Grumbrindle, the White Dwarf. Though Malekith will always wipe out Grumbrindle on Legendary, bear that in mind. Though you can certainly wipe out Malekith and the entirety of Naggaroth. You can play an entire campaign in Naggaroth. Like, long-term campaign goals. Eventually, like, once you come over here, taking all of this territory, get an alliance with Katep, or wiped out Katep out to sell this territory to someone else. Like, his territory is good because you do have climate suitability for the wasteland. At least it's good in theory, but there's 2 regions that are uninhabitable. Tarax shouldn't be an issue, and there's some really useful stuff. What you decide to do here, this is your choice. You can ally Direfin for your character, though I would probably recommend allying a Leaf and Arb just because you don't want to piss the High Elves. One of the worst things that could possibly happen in this campaign is you piss off the High Elves. If you want to go invade Ulthuan, go ahead. You have the tools needed to succeed in that, but I think it's just a better campaign plan overall to deal with Malekith. But effectively, your campaign struggles are going to be defined within the first 20 turns or so. Once you take over this entire territory, you can do whatever the hell you want. My stronger recommendation would be going to Kislev. But how do you go to Kislev? You have the teleportation mechanic through a Jinx. Through the Jinxed Land. And this will teleport the target army to a magical forest. What this allows you to do in practice, since there is no magical forest in Kislev, it allows you to teleport to the Griffinwood and teach Draika, who's the true mistress of the forest. Wipe out Draika, take her territory, and then get an alliance with Kislev to unlock Patriarchs, crucially for the casualty replenishment, and unlock the entire Kislev roster. And then, yeah, you can do, again, whatever you want. You can conquer the Empire, you can go into the Cast Wastelands, you can go into the mountains, you can fight a 2-front campaign, or just basically take territory all the way to the Iron Sand Desert, and you can just stop there. You don't even have to fight the Sisters of the Twilight. But let's talk about Ostankya's unique campaign mechanics. There's 2 things, but they don't really matter in terms of the effects, but you're going to want to use them. So what you're going to want to do as Ostankya, the way this works, she has a bunch of trinkets that give you either blessings or curses. These are based on various parts. Wood, teeth, stone, skulls, horns, bones. And what you want to do is you want to create incantations every single turn. Even if you're not going to use them, obviously it would be best to create incantations that benefit you, like range benefits, or reducing range of enemies, buffing your leadership, reducing enemy leadership, all that kind of stuff. But what's more important is that you continuously create incantations and also use the various top bar abilities over here. Why is that? Well, because you have 5 actions in total, and in order to unlock these, what you need to do is spend a certain amount of Spirit Essence. So after doing that chant, after doing that incantation, I need to spend 75 more Spirit Essences using learned hexes or creating witch hut incantations to access this hex. This can reduce campaign movement range. What you really want to do is unlock the Jinx length. You need to complete all of these to unlock your long campaign victory condition. In fact, I think like Ostankya can actually unlock her short campaign victory condition the fastest of all the legendary lords of Kislev. As long as you're constantly spending Spirit Essences to the maximum capacity, you only get it through the hut and through the chants, for the various jinxes, for the various effects. Over here for the hexes. And once you unlock Jinx Land, go beat up Draika, you can teleport multiple armies. Or initially you can only teleport Ostankya's army, but eventually you can upgrade this. You do have a special research tree that's a bit different than the regular one that Kislev works. So generally with Kislev factions, to unlock the various bottom tier research, you need to control the special cities. But you don't need to do this as Ostankya. You can just unlock the research here that's required, then get the various spirits, and this in turn will unlock the bottom tree. That's all you need to do. It would have been nice to have something similar for structures, if you could unlock structures in a similar way as opposed to having to go to Kislev. I think it gives you more campaign, it would have given more campaign variety. Keep in mind, you would still have wanted to go for Kislev because of the various landmarks that are incredibly powerful, so it's not like that would have been changed. Honestly, I'm just bitching about the fact that we don't have patriarchs for like the first 20 turns in a Kislev campaign, which it means I have to fight a lot more battles manually. That's my issue. But you do have the Tales from the Woods various campaign effects. You want to get these. These are instant research that you can get very, very, very quickly, or mostly very quickly. But like these research will take 1 turn to do. And they give you various benefits, like you can get 5% campaign movement range, which stacks with Troll Country Pathfinder. You can still get students, by the way, in your campaign, but these cost Spirit Essences. You'll be rolling in Spirit Essences throughout your campaign. I haven't seen a situation where you run out of Spirit Essences, but yes, get these various things. Like you can get like 20 armor for the things in the woods, but I would probably start with the campaign movement range. Eventually get all of these things, and crucially, what's important here is that you can get various benefits to the hexes that you have over here. So, for instance, if we're looking here, we get we can improve the armies created by the spirit hex, like the spirit hex that would summon an army. We can improve the bewitching land hex. So instead of it getting income gain from target settlement come 50%, you can gain the entire province. That is pretty powerful. You can teleport every army, so you can teleport any army to magical forests. You can stop the target army from moving entirely, as opposed to just reducing the campaign movement range by 50%. And this, by the way, is a 5-turn duration, so if anyone's sneaking up on you, it's like, no. And the great thing is you would want to use that anyway if you had the opportunity, because it's actually rare to find an army that's crossing your territory that you can use this hex on, so you want to use these as quickly as possible. Then you can get... the target settlement province will not gain any additional corruption for its duration. So there's a significant amount of benefits right at the very bottom over here, and this is all instant research, but you do need to unlock these hexes. The way you unlock the hexes is you get the Spirit Essences, then you get Quest Battle, which then will unlock the hexes. That will obviously give you money, income. The battles seem to be fairly easy, at least the first few ones. Like a bunch of ambushers. Like ambushers are like, I think, the best ranged unit that Kislev has in its roster right now. The reason I say it's the best ranged unit is that, one, they do more damage than Streltsy, which honestly I think that's already fucking ridiculous to begin with. And obviously from an effective standpoint, they'll be substantially better than Streltsy because they're the same cost, they're the same upkeep, but they don't have the gunpowder limitation. They also have Vanguard deployment. It's like there's no reason to use gunpowder units anymore as Kislev, unless you just want to have the Streltsy for the fact that they'll do better in auto-resolve. Ice Guard could still be useful because they can slow down enemies, but keep in mind they are going to lack that armor-piercing damage. So ambushers, yeah, they're a really powerful unit, but people complain like, oh, they're available too early. I don't think that's the problem with them, really, because early on, you're not going to be able to, like, you might get the full stack of them, but you're going to be bankrupt if you do that. Just keep in mind this. Kislev's economy is still very, very weak, so it's not like you can just mass 10 armies of these guys. You're going to have limitations. And in this campaign so far, I've had, like in the campaign I've done of her, I've had to balance things out between spiders, ambushers, and cossars in order to afford even 2 armies. So keep in mind the limitation that you have on ambushers is because of your overall economy. What you do in Kislev, my advice would be teleport to Kislev, make an alliance with Katrin, help her deal with Clan Molder, or let her be weakened, deliberately let her be weakened, because if she's weaker and you have good relations with her, you can confederate her easily. And I believe confederation is viable, but you do want to eventually get control of these cities, so letting Clan Molder run amok is probably in your interest, though keep in mind you do want to eventually get the Legendary Lords, because they're pretty powerful. Boris Ursus in particular is obviously in a trouble spot, though you can always use the Recruit Defeat the Legendary Lords mod to be able to get access to him instead of having to worry about running around trying to get confederation with him, which can be really frustrating, or having to revive him, because there is a way to revive an AI faction. Like you take their Starring Settlement. In the case of Boris, it's considered the Tower of Torment. You cause a rebellion there, they'll revive as a faction, and then you can obviously get access to them for that. That's the system. Or you can just use a mod that does it for you. And that is essentially all you need to know about Mother Ostankya. There is something else, however, that's worth mentioning here. Now, you can obviously get both the Cavernous Silk and to get the Eerie Woods early on, but you do have another choice that might work out just as well, if not better in some ways. You can get your Control and Growth building here. This has the benefit of getting you access to Gotrek and Felix, who have been buffed in this patch. And they're free. Like, you recruit them, they're available for free. They can not necessarily solo entire armies, but they can certainly lead an army of Khazars to overwhelming victory against every faction that's around here. So you do have that choice. Personally, I prefer going with ambushers and spiders and getting Gotrek and Felix later on. Maybe when I've already teleporting Kislev and I'm about to wipe out Draika. It is an experience when you think about the fact you're just going to wipe the floor with Draika. Just chew on that for a moment. So Ostankya is powerful. Do I think she's the most powerful Legendary Lord of Kislev? She's got benefits, but I think like overall Boris does end up stronger because he does have the Patriarchs and all that. But Ostankya is certainly substantially better than Kastaltin and Katrin. Anyway, that is all there is that I had to say on the subject. Kostin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.